my friend, today we are talking about style, not style, but artist style, of course. I am sure you are wondering quite a lot, should I have a style, how could I grow it, why I struggle to find my style, and I'm the same, of course. I am asking myself the same question, and I think I have a few insights to share with you from my experience and for my thinking, and some bit are a bit counterintuitive, so I hope it can bring something new to the table and helping you to thrive as artists. Before addressing the matter how to develop your style, let's just quickly define what a style is for an artist. First off, the idea of style implies that your work is original and that your personality shows through your art. Saying it's my style means that there is something that is yours and that makes your art different from other people's work. So we assume that other people may be able to recognize our work thanks to this style because it makes our art unique. So style would be a kind of a trademark or footprint in your art. Even if the vocabulary can be sometimes a bit confusing, you don't want to mess up between this style, this original footprint that you could bring to your artwork, with kind of a style which would rather mean an approach like abstract style. Maybe you would follow a bit of ink and wash urban sketching style, for example. So for clarity, I will call these techniques or approach, whereas we will keep the style vocabulary for what we are talking about today, which is this artistic footprint and the trademark that you would like to have for your work. So let's move on to the second point to try to define better what is a style. I think it's interesting and important to address a bit the matter of realistic work versus having a style. In my opinion, and some of you might disagree with me, but if your work is 100% realistic, which means looking like a photo, looking like a real thing perfectly, there would be no interpretation, no personal contribution to the subject. So 100% realistic work, in my opinion, would mean no style, but that's probably impossible to get perfect. So probably within the imperfection of a realistic work, you would start to get a bit of the style of the artist. However, I tend to think that the more realistic your work is, the less your style is showing through. For me, realism is like sport. It's a performance. It's yeah, I did it, and I am a bit like, yeah, good for you, but I don't really care. Yeah, sorry about that. I think it's a good practice, and that if you enjoy doing it, it's wonderful, and you really should keep doing it. But in my opinion, it's not so interesting for a viewer. It can be interesting for the doer, but not for the viewer. I mean, you can be impressed, but you can't be inspired. And as for me, anyway, what I am more interested in is being inspired and having the personality of an artist showing through his or her art. So that's true that some realistic artists are able to show a bit of a special style for kind of, let's say, 80% realistic or maybe 70% realistic work. So this allows 20 to 30%, expression and interpretation of the subject. But once again, in my thinking, the higher expression you put in your work and the more room you let for interpretation and style. This said, there is no magic formula like let's get looser and we will have a style. This is not true. I mean, most beginners produce non-realistic work because they wouldn't be able to do it anyway, with no style because they don't have the mastery to do it. So you not only want to bring looseness and interpretation in your work so that it's more stylish, you also of course have to get a kind of a mastery. But in my opinion, it's a good start, not just wanting to draw well and paint well, but having the will and the idea of bringing interpretation and expressivity to your work. So the first point to define the style was personality, the second point is expressivity, and the third point is consistency. Usually when we talk about style, we think about something that it's always in your art. As we said, having a style means that people may be able to recognize your work, and that's because they would be able to spot something in common between your pieces, this kind of trademark or footprint that we talked about earlier. And although that's true, I think this concept can be a bit misleading and leads people to do always the same thing, trying to follow their style, even if it's not really what it's about, in my opinion. So So in the following, let's talk about how to develop your style. Should you do always the same thing to get a style? Woohoo! For sure, I think that deciding that this could be your style and doing it all over again is the safest way not to find your style. First off, this might surprise you, but you are not really going to be the one defining your own style. Style is more about the perception of others on your work. This is because other people have a step back regarding to your art, so they are able to see kind of the red thread waving in your art is a really more subtle and more interesting way than you or than us. Of course, here I am talking about recognizing what your style is rather than working on it. So you are the one working on your style and trying to find your personality and your expressivity in your art, and other people will spot the consistency part and the red thread and the common thing between your pieces and what your style is. So because we crave so much finding our style, we tend, as we say, to rush in the process and to decide, oh, this could be my style, whereas the right thing to do is having the backward approach. The style is a result of your learning process as an artist. It's not a start and then once you will have a style, you will produce a wonderful work. The practice comes first and the style comes second, and not the reverse. That's why it's important that you detach a bit from this idea of having a consistent style, because this may hurt your learning process and your ability to find your real style, your true style eventually. So following just one straight path that you would have chosen at first in order to try to find your style is not the way to find it, because if your style is not at the end of this path, you are screwed. On the contrary, exploring every path and making turns and going back seems a lot messier and a bit like I don't know what I am doing thing, but it's the way to do. Life is messy, art is messy, learning also is messy, and the process of finding your style really definitely should be messy. So take the side road, explore everything, take the long way round, be curious, explore, experiment, try everything, every technique, every approach. This is especially true if you are a beginner or if you are a more seasoned artist and you feel like in a rut and you don't manage to find your style. This exploratory practice is the way to go. The other day I was chatting with Marta Holmes via text messages, and we came upon this topic of style, and what Mark said was just, for people who ask about how to develop a style, it's only a matter of doing enough work. And yeah, Mark always has been an advocate of quantity over quality, saying that the more you produce and the more you practice and the better you get, so quality comes from quantity. And for sure this is true, there is no shortcut for practice. To this idea of the quantity of practice, I would add the idea of diversity of practice as well. I truly think that diversity of exploration is key to find your style in your work, and strangely it doesn't even hurt the consistency. A few years ago for my photographic work, I thought I had no style, or maybe several styles, because I was shooting all kinds of subjects from urban scene to landscape, from still life to portraits, and I used every kind of technique, black and white and colors, playing with light, with blur, everything. But people following my art maintained I had a style. They were able to recognize my photos at first glance in their social media feed, and in fact they were able to spot what made it mine beyond the diversity. They were able to see this red thread connecting my art. And style is more subtle anyway than making black and white street photography or abstract floral paintings, for example. It's about the character of your pieces, and it comes from your unique way to aggregate and combine and blend your influences. So my advice is, rather than shrinking your practice to try to fit with the style, expand it to make it richer, and you will find some bits and pieces of your style on your way. Your style is going to be a combination of teeny things that make your work look like yours. So this is quite obvious that you have to explore a ton in order to seek these things and grab a thing here and pick a thing there that you will be able to include in your style and combine so that your style becomes something really unique to you. So in brief, trust the process rather than trying to tame it. Plus, we know that the good part is the journey, not the destination. So we don't really care if we have a style or not, but our life and our art can benefit so much from a rich and open-minded practice. And it makes it so much more interesting than trying to narrow it down and boiling down to a style that you would have to stick to the rest of your life. Because yes, your style can evolve. Your style should evolve at the same time as you. A few months ago, this woman, Pamela, sent me an email addressing this very issue, and she was saying, I am changing my style every few months, every few years, because each time I feel that I am not getting anywhere. And indeed, she probably also had the impression not to get anywhere because she was changing her style all the time. But I think this probably came from the misconception we talked about at the beginning of the video, where you are thinking about your painting approach like your style. So you think you have to choose an approach or a technique and stick with it, and you get frustrated at some point because you don't want to restrict yourself so much with this thing. Because this approach is not yours, it's just a painting category, it's not your style. So during this exploratory phase, that could last your whole life in my opinion. Be careful not to embrace a painting technique as your style. Studying this technique is just a way of exploring your option and, as we said, grabbing and picking a few things for what will become your style. But it's not an end, it's the journey. So that's totally normal to go from one approach to another in order to grow your art. But because of this misconception of, oh, I guess this is my style, you feel frustrated when you stop it and when you embrace something else, because this makes you think that you were wrong earlier and everything, whereas by thinking that this was not your style and just an approach that you were studying and that you learned something from it for what is going to become your style, you will absolutely free yourself of all this expectation you have with it. And so if this gives you an impression of inconsistency, just think that your style is what stays beyond the technique, beyond the approach.
I was just gonna say, but every day, don't go to say nothing, and that's too. Got an kind of woman that me feel so good.
And if you feel you are not good enough anyway to try to find your style, I think you are wrong. I realized after a few times, months of drawing and painting, how much it's kind of absurd how much we focus on likeness and how we should depict a subject, whereas what is important eventually is how we interpret it and which personality we give to our pieces. Obsessing too much on trying to make the subject recognizable, make it stiff when it should be lively, it make it wonky when it should be dynamic, make it random when it should be unique. So rather than obsessing too much about finding your style, focus on painting with style. Focus on personality and expressivity rather than consistency. And except if you started sketching or painting 2 weeks ago, you probably already have a style anyway. Maybe a bad style, but you just can't help putting something personal, just tiny twists that are special and unique to you. One day I was with my sister and I was doodling some kind of little leaves on a branch, or maybe a heart or something, really the childlike illustration way. And my sister said, "Oh, that's funny, I can recognize your own way of doing it, even if it's so doodly and childlike." And she was true, you wouldn't doodle a heart exactly like what I would do. We all have our personal ways. Can't you spot your kids or grandkids or nieces or nephews' style? I am sure you can in their color choices, in the way they put marks on paper, in the way they organize a thing on the page. So in fact, we don't really care if we have a style, but the thing is, we do! Good news! So finally, what we want to do is not creating the style, is not finding our style as if it was something that would come from the outside. What we are searching for is improving our style, which means making it better quality-wise and also making it bolder and stronger so that it shows more in our work, so strength-wise. Before getting to my last but not least point, I hope it's not too long, I would like to suggest that you would share some artistic topics you are interested in. I know that the demonstration when I am showing you how to paint and sketch are your favorites, but I also think I have some things to say, and sometimes I just feel like sharing with you some insights because I think the mindset is so important too. So please tell me if you like this format as well, and feel free to suggest some topics about creativity and visual art that you would be interested to having my opinion and sharing and advices about. So the last point I want to express is realizing that your style comes from the visual identity of your work, but not only. I can assure you that it comes also from your heart, from your mind, from your soul. For example, I tend to think that my own style is about finding a bit of poetry in the world, showing things through the bright side, sharing a vision, a special way to see things, and this is the case beyond the technique, whether it's photography, sketching, watercolor, video making, writing, everything. So the visual translation we are making when creating our art should be supported with a kind of vision, and I think the way you want to showcase your personality in the world, maybe finding your style has a bit also something to do with personal growth, personal development. So embrace your personality to give personality to your art and to give it style. And I'm sure you will be surprised when people will talk about your style when you were just thinking, but I have just a lot of fun with painting. So I guess that's it. Paint, 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 paint with style, paint with style. Yay! If you like this kind of video, feel free to watch this one about falling in love with watercolor. Have a great creative day. Bye!